Hello and welcome to the West Asia Post. I am Ghadi Francis coming to you from Beirut for another episode from the heart of war and volatility. This week in the West Asia Post, we will discuss the ongoing operations in Gaza. Rafah, the place where more than 1.5 million Palestinian refugees are residing, is now at risk. Also on the show, Turkey, Iran and the GCC. But first, let's take a look at the headlines.
Israel asked International Court of Justice to dismiss a request by South Africa to issue additional emergency measures in Rafah ahead of IDF's planned offensive into the city. Israel argues emergency measures issued 3 weeks ago already covered the situation of hostilities in Gaza as a whole. Hence, the request needs to be rejected. Egypt is reportedly preparing an area at the Gaza border to accommodate Palestinians in case of an Israeli offensive in Rafah prompts an exodus. Cairo has denied such preparations and reiterated any such displacement will be unacceptable. Senior Israeli ministers reject Palestinian statehood after a recent American report says the U.S. was advancing plans to establish a Palestinian state. They also called a Palestinian state an existential threat to Israel. A top Emirati diplomat defends UAE's decision to maintain ties with Israel despite its mounting concern over the war. Says they have been able to provide crucial aid to Gaza because of bilateral cooperation. Kuwaiti parliament dissolved after a protracted stalemate between cabinet minister and lawmakers dragged on despite a new emir taking the throne. The royal decree issued to dissolve assembly accuses the parliamentarians of committing constitutional violations, including use of inappropriate language.
The Israeli offensive in Gaza has taken an unprecedented turn. Rafah, the place where more than 1.5 million Palestinians are now residing after it was designated as a safe zone. It is the place where the UN is raising alarms of potential slaughter. And it is the place where Netanyahu's eyes are on. The next report tells you more.
Building by building, Gaza is collapsing. Since October 7, in the pursuit of the goal to eliminate Hamas, the Israeli forces have demolished everything that has come in their way. Large swaths of land, schools, hospitals, places of worship, refugee camps, all have been leveled. Multiple evacuation orders have displaced the people, first from the north to the middle, and then further south.
We hope the war ends quickly. We're tired of fleeing from one city to another. We are so tired, I swear to God. People are tired. I'm hoping the world stands with us and looks at us with a kind, merciful eye.
Israel claims the Hamas militants hide among the civilians and use public places as a base. 4 months into the war, Israel is now eyeing Rafah, the last refuge of the displaced Gazans, where over 1 million are packed into small spaces with abysmal facilities. The Israeli Prime Minister's latest Rafah offensive is all set to be launched. An evacuation plan is being drawn.
The areas that we've cleared north of Rafah are plenty of areas there, but we're working out a detailed plan to do so. And that's what we've done up to now. We're not cavalier about this. This is part of our war effort to get civilians out of harm's way. It's part of Hamas's effort to keep them in harm's way.
But Gazans have only one question: where to go now? Egypt has refused to take any refugees. While all focus is on Rafah, Israeli forces raided Gaza's biggest functioning hospital, Al-Nasser in Khan Yunis. Amid smoke and debris, sick, wounded, displaced, all had to be evacuated. Israeli army says Hamas has been hiding hostage bodies in the hospital.
attacked by Israel-hamas at the hospital.
We are committed to finding and returning the bodies of those hostages in Gaza.
The airstrikes are also constantly hitting Rafah. There's panic and chaos on the ground. Some are fleeing to middle of the besieged strip again.
In the middle of the night, I heard the sounds of a helicopter, fighter jets, drones, and missiles all around. Our neighborhood had returned into a war zone. Everyone was petrified at that moment, as they had no idea where to hide, and in fact there was no safe place to be found.
I fled Al-Makhazi, came to Rafah, and here I am, returning to Al-Makhazi again. Last night in Rafah was very tough. We're going back to Al-Makhazi out of fear, displaced from area to another. Hopefully, Al-Makhazi area would be safe.
Hamas has warned the Rafah offensive could lead to tens of thousands of deaths. From the United States to Germany to France. All are wary of Israel's next step. Australia, Canada, and New Zealand have also warned against the ground offensive. The United Nations says Rafah assault could lead to a slaughter. But the Israeli Prime Minister is firm. He says Rafah is the last stronghold of Hamas. Israeli army must prevail in the southernmost city of Gaza to achieve victory on the Palestinian militants.
And now let's go to The Hague, to the International Criminal Court. Well, after 3 weeks of the ICC ruling against Israel for genocide, now Israeli hostages have filed a report against Hamas. We'll tell you more in this report.
On the sidelines of the war in Gaza, families of hostages have waged their own battle. Freed hostages and 100 family members of those still held captive gathered at The Hague. The group is pushing the International Criminal Court to bring them justice and to help bring their loved ones home.
Perpetrators should be held criminally accountable for the atrocity they committed. We trust that the ICC has the capacity to bring about justice for the hostages and their families. The visit of the prosecutor to Israel has reinforced our belief in the integrity and professionalism of the court. This action is not just about accountability. It's about applying pressure for the release of the hostages, for encouraging nations worldwide to take legal steps against those responsible for the heinous acts.
On October 7th last year, Hamas carried out one of the deadliest assaults on Israeli territory. The militant group killed over 1,200 people and kidnapped 250 as hostages. Ever since a hostage truce deal in November facilitated the return of 150 of those held captive, but hundreds more remain in Gaza, some of whom have been killed by Israeli airstrikes in the enclave. While thousands of Israelis have been pushing Benjamin Netanyahu's government to strike a deal, little to no action has been taken by the Israeli Prime Minister. The families now want the ICC to issue arrest warrants for Hamas leaders.
We, the families, are going there to file the claim, and we want to make sure that the world acts and that their freedom is hindered as much as ours is now hindered. And we want to make sure that they pay for the crimes that they have committed and are still committing, taking our families hostage.
The ICC is a separate entity from the ICJ, where South Africa had filed a case against Israel on charges of genocide in Gaza. The ICC is a treaty-based criminal court. Its primary role focuses on individual criminal responsibility for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. While Israel is not a member of the ICC and does not recognize its jurisdiction, Palestinian territories were admitted as its members in 2015. The case against Hamas comes weeks after the World Court issued an interim ruling in South Africa's case of genocide against Israel on January 26th. The International Court of Justice, or World Court, had ordered Israel to ensure that its forces prevent acts of genocide in Gaza, allow humanitarian aid into the region, and also punish those inciting genocide towards Palestinians. The 17-member bench also ordered Israeli authorities to submit a report on actions taken in 1 month. But more than 3 weeks in, nothing appears to have changed. On the contrary, the war in Gaza has gotten worse. Netanyahu's Operation Rafah has put the southern Gaza city under danger. Out of 2.3 million population in Gaza, 1.5 million Palestinians are currently holed up in Rafah. The city is the single largest refugee camp in the entire enclave. But IDF operations in the area has world leaders and even top ICC prosecutors worried.
I've made it clear that I have real concern over the reports coming out of Rafah, the possibility of further ground incursions by Israeli troops, the reported bombardments, and the reality that the laws of war must be respected. They can't be rendered hollow. They can't be interpreted so as to void them of meaning or to dilute or eviscerate any protective purpose that the Geneva Conventions and the law provides the most vulnerable children, women, people that are sick, or civilians.
An explosion in Iran damaged a crucial gas pipeline. Now, what was the reason of the explosion? Was it a terror attack from inside the country? Was it a regional attack? The next report decodes that.
Without naming the culprit, Iran has slammed sabotage attempts and terror activities after a recent attack on its gas pipeline. On Wednesday, twin explosions struck Iran's natural gas pipeline, that too at a time of heightened West Asian volatility. Details revealed are scarce. What is known is that the explosion occurred in the pipeline running near the Caspian Sea and the Fars province. In his comments to local media, Iran's oil minister slammed the terrorist act of sabotage. He said that the officials are working round the clock to have the pipeline back and running.
Fortunately, this did not cause loss of life. Our colleagues have been busy repairing gas pipelines since last night. One of the goals of the enemy was to cut off the gas to large provinces of our country. Fortunately, this did not happen.
This explosion comes as Iran witnesses an unusual rise in mysterious blasts and killings. On 11th of February, there was a similar blast that temporarily halted supply on the north-south gas pipeline. In the past, Arab separatists in southwestern Iran have claimed attacks against oil pipelines. But attacks on such infrastructure are rare elsewhere. However, in recent years, tensions have risen as Iran faces an economy hobbled by international sanctions over its nuclear program. Tehran has also faced rare mass civil unrest, most recently in 2022. Over the death of Mahsa Amini following her non-compliance with hijab rules. Senior figures in Tehran have connected these activities to actions of foreign-backed terror groups. And of course, the usual suspects here are once again Israel and the US. Tehran in the past have accused the two countries of fueling domestic tensions and backing anti-state groups in the country. Israel has carried out attacks in Iran, but has predominantly targeted its nuclear program. From Iran to the northernmost part of West Asia, Türkiye.
Turkish authorities are racing time to rescue mine workers stuck underground. Now, this has raised alarms and questions on whether the authorities have taken into consideration safety hazards. The next report tells you more.
Just a few days after Türkiye marked the first anniversary of the deadly earthquake, another tragedy has hit its doorstep. A landslide in a controversial copper gold mine on Tuesday. 10 million cubic meters of sludge suddenly crashed down from a gully. From trees to cars, it engulfed everything in its path. Nine workers are still trapped, and hopes for their rescue are getting dimmer by the moment. 5 of the trapped workers are likely in a container, 3 in a vehicle, and 1 in his truck in a different part of the site. It has been over 3 days. Hundreds of rescuers continue to the challenging search through a cyanide-laced field in eastern Türkiye. Officials have launched a probe into the incident. 4 people have been arrested, including the pit's manager. But there is a glaring concern for the authorities. There are fears that dangerous chemicals could leak from the site and create a wider environmental disaster. Environmentalists worry that cyanide and sulfuric acid used in the gold extraction process could spread to the nearby Euphrates River that runs from Turkey to neighboring Syria and Iraq. Trying to allay concerns, the Environmental Ministry said it was testing the Euphrates for chemicals and had seen no evidence of any pollution so far. But Turkey's Union of Chambers and Engineers and Architects are urging the government to shut the mine down immediately. Even in 2022, the union called on the government to shut down the mine, one of the biggest in Turkey, following a cyanide leak. Turkey has a poor mine safety record. In 2022, an explosion at the Amasra coal mine on the Black Sea coast killed 41 workers. The country's worst mining disaster took place in 2014 at a coal mine in Soma, western Turkey, where 301 people were killed.
After more than a decade of civil war in Syria, electricity has become a very scarce commodity. Now this has the working class going to cafes to work. In the next story, we tell you how the electricity problem has made the cafe culture more popular in Syria. Take a look.
Cafe culture is brewing in parts of Syria. From students to workers, all are flocking to nearby cafes. But the reason is neither the taste of coffee nor the aroma of freshly baked bread, but rather power supply.
I'm suffering just like other people from power cuts and from transportation difficulties. Therefore, it's easier for me to sleep here rather than searching for a place to park my car, and also to avoid the consumption of limited petrol, especially since I'll have to reopen the cafe at 9 a.m. the next morning.
The crisis-ridden country is suffering from massive power outages. Blackouts lasting up to 20 hours are now common. Its civil war took a toll on the country's infrastructure. With no reliable public source of electricity available at home, cafes are now turning into informal workspaces in Damascus.
I prefer to study at home. It's better for me. However, due to long blackouts lasting up to 6 or 7 hours, I am unable to recharge my tablet. Additionally, the lamp batteries don't last long enough. Therefore, I am compelled to go study with my friends in a cafe to have light and to recharge my tablet.
Syria's civil unrest began in 2011, and within the span of months, it transformed into an all-out civil war. At first, President Bashar al-Assad suppressed pro-democracy protests in the country, and they soon took shape of an armed rebellion against the presidency and plunged the country into civil war. Although fighting has now waned away, minor skirmishes are still reported. The Syrian war and the Islamic State's role in the conflict destroyed the country's civil infrastructure beyond repair. United Nations Refugee Agency suggests over 11 million fled their homes during the war, while over 6.8 million remain internally displaced. As the beginning of 2023, 15.3 million people were in need of humanitarian assistance, and about 12 million did not know when their next meal would come. The United Nations estimate it would take around $250 billion to rebuild Syria. But uncertainty looms over where the money would come from.
And now back to the GCC, to the United Arab Emirates. Now Abu Dhabi has become the home to the country's first stone-built Hindu temple. The Bab's temple is going to start receiving public visits as of March 1st. The next story shows you the great architecture of the Bab's Hindu temple, Abu Dhabi. Take a look.
Because of the large-heartedness of the rulers of the UAE, giving us space, not just space, love and support, and it celebrates friendship at the highest level. It makes the temple special because it is the first traditional stone Hindu temple in the history of humanity in this part of the world.
Like love, harmony, peace and diversity. If you wanted to see in the world, you can see here at the Abu Dhabi right now during the inauguration of the Hindu temple.
That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, always bringing you the most recent updates, news and ground reports from the world's most volatile region. Until then, stay safe. I am Ghadi Francis signing off from Beirut, Lebanon. For more global news, keep on watching WION World is One.